share with you guys. Some of this might seem a little basic to the more experienced people, but I've got several things I want to go over that are common issues that we all have or had while we're turning, and I'm going to help walk you guys through that. And then towards the end, we're going to turn bowl. So, how many of you guys are bowl turners? How many bowl turners? Okay. How many people work with bowl gouges? Good amount. Okay. Is anybody turning with a carbide scrapers? There's no wrong answer. Carbide scrapers are fine. I want to share something with you. I'm going to turn this blank, and I want to show you guys something. One of the biggest things with turning with a bowl gouge is what it can do with in-grain. Okay, so now this is a side grain mounted bowl. So we've got grain going through it, and we've got in-grain on opposite sides, and then we have, of course, have side grain. So what's going to happen? Do we have our power on? Is this on?
No.
All the way up?
There you go.
Okay. Well, let's see what we got here. Yep.
Right way.
All right, so I'm going to come around here. It's a little tricky during these demos because when I'm filming at home, I've got a camera right on top of me at all times because I really want to show you guys all those angles, and that's why I do those videos that way. So it's like, I wish there was a way I could get everybody in here, but we're going to make this work. I'm going to end up passing this around in just a second. So what I'm doing is I just made a cut with my bowl gouge, and I'm going to use my carbide scraper now. And I'm going to attempt to make as clean a cut as I possibly can with this carbide scraper. But I want you guys to see this because it's really important to understand. And I just rotated this. I'm on the sharpest side here of this blade. I'm taking my time and making sure I'm getting a really clean cut here. Okay. All right. So what I want to show you here is the difference between these two. And I'm going to go ahead and mark these. I'm going to pass this around for you. All right, I got pencils and markers.
Here's the marker. Marker right here.
Is that a marker? Thank you.
Can we get the camera closer? There's a pencil too.
Okay.
It's the cable.
You got it all. Okay. You're good. Okay.
We don't have enough cable to get close.
Okay.
So,
So,
how far up can you bring the arm on the tripod? Is that if I put it off, then I have to go back to take care of it. You have to wait until we get on camera.
I got a connection here.
Any donation? If anybody has,
pass this around.
If anybody
So what
has
I've done here, guys, you can see this.
Listen up.
We've got a carbide scraper here, and we've got the bowl gouge over here. Now, there's not a ton of difference here, but you're going to see what the difference is between these. Now, why tear out is such a huge problem is this. Okay, so if we could have the curve, we've got the shape of the bowl here, and we've got the end grain going like this, coming through here. What's happening is it's not just a rough surface. If you've got a little bit of tool marks on that, a lot of that can be sanded out. The problem is when people see the tear out, they think, well, I'm just going to sand that. But what's happening is we're looking at this like on a microscopic level. What's happening, there's fibers that are being literally pulled out. It's why it's called tear out. And they're deep inside the end of that wood. And in order to get this to where it is going to be smooth, you literally have to sand down all the way through all of those pulled out areas. That's why it's so important to make clean cuts. if you have a clean cut, you're not gonna have as much problem as far as having a smooth surface, and you'll be able to sand it a lot easier. All right, so, does anybody notice like my exotic rare wood species I brought today? It's pretty exclusive. It's Northwestern. It's a subspecies of the Northwestern 2x4. That's a 2x8. Okay. Now, I'm going to explain to you why I have set that up. Why the 2x8? Well, there's a lot of reasons to use construction lumber to practice and to learn how to turn. Okay. It's cheap, it's readily available, it's easy to access, and it's insignificant. You're probably thinking, well, what does that even mean? Why would you want to turn something that's insignificant? All right, I get this question asked so many different times in so many different ways. People explain to me that they're getting started turning, they just got a lathe, and their son or their daughter is getting married in 2 or 3 months, and they're going to turn them a salad bowl, and they're going to turn them 8 serving bowls and that, and they're trying to figure out which exotic wood species they should purchase to go do this. And I was thinking, all right, so we probably all come from a woodworking environment, correct? Everybody did a little bit of woodworking of some sort before you went to wood turning, correct? Well, wood turning, as you know, is so different than almost every other woodworking form, except maybe carving or doing really elaborate joinery where you're really, most woodworking, there's not a ton of detailed skills that go, thanks, Barry. There's not a lot of detailed personal skills and talent that go into a lot of different woodworking. Not to say that, not to diminish or anything, the whole process and doing all of those steps obviously takes time and knowledge. But with wood turning, we have to practice and we have to develop our skills. This machine is simply rotating a piece of wood, all right? So in order to get to the point where you're going to be able to make that really beautiful bowl that you imagine, okay, so everybody did it. I mean, let me think back to the day when you decided you were going to get a lathe or you decided you were going to come here and start turning. And what did you think about when you thought about, wait a minute, I can turn a bowl? You started thinking, you started imagining pretty elaborate things, right? Well, this is what I imagined. This is what I imagined when I first started. Actually, when I went to Danny's. I imagined, well, I'm going to be able to do that. That's what I want, right? I want to do that, okay? In reality, this is what I did. Okay? And then this is actually my first bowl at Danny's, okay? And this is cherry. So obviously I keep this is a good one, but there's a little bit of a difference between these two, all right? We kind of have these high expectations, like I'm going to make this beautiful gift for somebody, and we hope to get there almost immediately. Unfortunately, it doesn't usually work like that. And what's the barrier? What's keeping us from doing that? Well, it's any other skill that we've ever learned, whether it's riding a bicycle or it's cooking or something. You got to practice it. You have to have the repetition. You have to keep doing it. You have to do it. You have to figure out why it's not what you had in your mind. You have to make an adjustment. You have to correct, and you have to go back and do it again. So guess what? You can make a whole bunch of these blanks very cheaply and very quickly, and you don't care about them. You're not going to give this as a wedding gift, right? So what's nice about that is you can put it on the lathe, you can practice with it, you can learn a whole bunch of different techniques, hone your talents, and then you can move on to another one. Once you're tired of it, try another one. And once you've got your skills and your talents built up, then you can start getting into the more elaborate work. All right, so you need the light off for the camera?
If you need it?
No, it's okay. I don't need it. All right, so my repetition story, I never started with this because I didn't figure that out early enough. My repetition was pecan, which actually is a really nice wood. Didn't really know it at the time because I was doing primarily woodworking projects, and we had a friend of a friend that had a great big huge pecan limbs that fell in their backyard, took out their fence, and they had their dog. They couldn't let their dog out, so they really wanted this wood taken away. So I cut it long lengths, thinking that I'm going to cut this into slabs and do some flat work with it, do some traditional woodworking. That's not making sense, yeah. Oh wait, you might be able to get it up here if I move this. There you go. Does that work? Because it was in your camera, or this is in your way, okay. So I had all this pecan, I threw it in the barn, and it actually spalted, which was absolutely kind of an added bonus. And then that's when I first started wood turning. And I decided, you know what, I got all that pecan, I might as well turn it. But nobody told me, has anybody in here turned pecan? Okay, so have you turned older pecan that has the end grain gets really punky and soft? Okay, well that's what I had. And I didn't know any better, so I turned it. And one didn't turn out. I had lots of it, so I just kept turning it and kept turning it. And it's basically the same process as what happens when you turn something that's not really that important. Now I did get some nice bowls out of it, nicer than I would get with 2x8s. But the whole point was, and what I didn't know, and it was unknowingly, was I was just simply building the repetition, building up those skills with that. And then one day, somebody handed me a piece of green black cherry. And I thought I was turning a bar of soap. Working with the end grain of the pecan was very difficult, and I had to really hone my skills to be able to cut that end grain and not tear it out. If I got aggressive, that end grain would just tear out, and I'd have a piece that looked horrible. I had to glue it up, and I just didn't want to do that. So I worked really hard on my skills to get that end grain going. Now the other benefit of the 2x8s is it's kiln dried and it tears out like crazy. Yeah, so it sounds like it's a negative thing, but it actually isn't, because if you can hone your skills, you don't have to make these perfect, but if you can hone your skills to where you're getting a decent surface on this, and then you take an opportunity to go to a better piece of wood, you're going to have great results. All right, so let me show you some things. We're going to talk about some gouge techniques and some things that occur here. Has anybody ever had, actually, where's that blank? I need that blank back. Yeah, let's bring that back up here if you don't mind. Okay, let's go through some practical things that apply for you guys. How many have had skip backs, where you go to present the tool and it skips back? Yes? Yes? All right, do you know what's going on when that occurs? Have you solved that problem? All right, I'm going to help you solve that problem right here. This is probably worth the whole night right here. So here's our grain. You can actually see it pretty well in the wood right here. So the grain's going through here. We have end grain over here. The end grain's always going to be our problem with the side grain mounted bowl. Cutting the sides, super easy. It just shaves away. But the end grain, because when we think about this, when the gouge comes across it, it's coming about a 90 degree, and that's where we have most of our issues. Well, when it comes to the sweep back, where it's getting this kickback over here, let's see if I can mimic this. It never does it when I want it to do it. So we get the lathe going. And we go to...
What speed are you running at?
I'm at about 500-600 RPMs. I'm not going to go that fast. This is another huge issue, and we're going to talk more about that too, is how many people primarily do spindle turning? Okay? How many do spindle and bowls? Okay. If you're coming from the spindle world, you really need to be careful when you come into to start doing bowls, because you're going to turn a lot slower. Because of this diameter, RPMs need to be a lot slower. I typically will never turn a bowl over 1,000 RPMs. All right? Now, my lathe that I use in my shop actually doesn't have a readout, so I'm basically gauging it from feel. I know when I'm going too fast. Okay? But the reason is you have much larger mass here than you would on a smaller spindle diameter. And we can talk about that more in a second. I'm going to see if I can do a kickback here. Okay, you see that? You see how we're getting this kickback? And it can happen for a variety of different ways. Okay, so let's think about what's happening here. You see the grain lines here. What's happening is the grain of this and this end grain, you see it come around. The tool's right here. Everything's fine right here, but all of a sudden, right here, the grain becomes basically a broom. It's like sweeping. It's sweeping the tool away from that position, okay? So it wants to kick it out. What's happening, and the problem why that's occurring, is I have the flute at a 1 or 2 o'clock position. So in other words, if the flute is straight up in the air, that's a 12 o'clock position. I'm rotating at about a 1 or 2 o'clock position, which is kind of a typical push cut. If I start like that though, it's taking that angle, and the grain as it comes around is pushing it out of the way. So the way to overcome that is we rotate all the way to 90 degrees or 3 o'clock position, all right? And we set the bevel up, and we ride the bevel right on the absolute edge here. Let's take a look. What I do is I go to 3 o'clock position. And I start what I call like a ledge or a shelf there. And once that ledge or shelf is started, then I can proceed with a cut. All right? It's basically that simple. What's happening, if you're getting a kickback, you've got your tool angled and it's being swept out by the grain of the wood, okay? So the way to resolve that is to bring it up to the 3 o'clock position. Now, that's if you're starting a cut like that. So what happens if you are inside a bowl? So let's say you've got a bowl, you've done the exterior, and you've got it ready to go here, and you're working on clearing out the interior. And you're making your passes through this interior. Can you see it? All right. So you get in here, and you start working down, and you're down towards the bottom of the bowl, and you're getting the same thing happening here. You get up here and you want to make a pass, and you get the same kickback. Well, why is it happening in the bottom of the bowl? The grain's doing the same thing. The grain pattern is the same down here. I don't know if you can see that in here. The grain pattern is the same way. So as it comes around, it wants to push the tool out if you have an angle. So it makes it easy for it to be swept out. So the way around that is to come up at a 90-degree angle, the 3 o'clock position. And then you want to close the flute at 3 o'clock, right at the bottom of the center here. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but this bowl's really thick still. Now, here's another secret for really honing your skills and your turning abilities, is as you're working a bowl and you're working down to that bottom, instead of just racing down to that bottom and just ripping all that material out, pretend you're taking your last pass right now. So if you look at, I've established this wall thickness, it's only that thick, okay? But the bottom is that thick. So I gotta make a lot more passes. Well, that's a lot more opportunity for me to go through and make a nice slow pass, pretending that's my last cut. So I can make a nice clean cut, practice my bowl gouge skills, practice getting across the bottom of the bowl, and do it just one at a time, one pass at a time, until I actually get down to the very end of it. And I might have 50 different opportunities to practice that skill. So that's another way to get the repetitions in. All right, let's talk about some other issues that you might have with the bowl gouge. How many people have trouble with tool marks with their bowl gouge?
Yeah.
Some? Okay. All right. I'm going to show you some of the common tool marks, and we'll explain how to solve those as well. Okay. So we've all heard the term riding the bevel. Yes. Does everybody feel comfortable with riding the bevel? Everybody's kind of like, we kind of, all right, you're feeling good about it. So essentially, what you need to be thinking about is the bevel of the gouge is basically a guide, and it should be parallel to the cut you're making at all times. All right. When it's not parallel, when we have situation where, let me see if I can throw it this way. You got the, yeah, I got it. I'm gonna write that down right there. Okay, so if we're coming around here, let's say, and here's our bowl gouge. We want that bevel to be parallel with the bottom edge that we're cutting. So it's literally parallel with that cut. Now, if the nose is leaning inward and the heel's up in the air, that's basically we're dragging the tip across there. So that's what this looks like. Let's go ahead and do this. So I'm not on bevel, I'm up higher. I'm going to show you this in just a second. Let me do the cut and I'll bring it to the camera. So I'm up on the nose. And you can see what's happening. Basically the nose is just dragging across there, all right? So the obvious solution for that is to drop the handle back and get the heel. Can you see this? You all see that, obviously. So we want to get that back so smooth and we want to get on bevel. So let me do this on bevel. You see the vibration in the lathe there for a second? That's what I'm using to turn down the lathe. I don't want to turn it up higher now. Okay, I want to show you this section. I'm going to show you something else. Okay, so Steve mentioned the ABCs. You guys all know the ABCs. Well, I like to use the AHBCs. It's not quite as easy to remember because you got to throw that H in there. So anchor, always anchor. So what's going to happen if this bowl is moving and the tool hits it, it's going to slam it into the tool rest. Obviously, I don't want to do that to my bowl gouge. That's kind of abusive. So obviously we want to anchor it, but instead of going right to the bevel, because that means I'm basically parallel and I'm ready for my cut, and it's going to engage immediately. Okay. Instead of going directly to the bevel, I go to my heel. So AHBC. So I will go to the heel and I will let the heel rub just a little bit so I can pick up and see exactly where I am. Then I can bring the tool up to where the bevel is, then start the cut. Now where this is really valuable, this is for picking up a cut. So if I want to pick up a cut, like where I stopped right here and I want to pick that up, a lot of times we end up cutting a little bit deeper, it doesn't quite match. But if you let the heel rub, you're going to have a lot more success. So I'm going to bring the tool up. I'm letting the heel rub here, and then I'm going to apply down pressure. Now I'm bringing the bevel right up to this edge, and then now I'm engaging and cutting. And besides that little gap in the two glued up pieces, you really can't see where I picked up. It's a really good way to pick up a cut and have control over it. So you're coming in, you're anchoring, but you're starting out here on the heel, bring the bevel up, then cut. So AHBCs. So think about that. Now, another thing is that can be an issue with the heel, and you might have tool marks that look like this. I had these for a long time. I couldn't figure out what it was. Let me see if I can do it.
Your phone.
Yeah, I guess. I brought a flashlight. I don't know where here it is. There's my stuff. Okay. So, let's see. By the way, it's really good to have a good light source. Okay, look right down here. Do you see that?
The shiny marks, yeah.
There. Do you see that? If you shine right down the side, do you see these ripples?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You see those ripples? I had this for the longest time. It's driving me nuts. Couldn't figure out what that was. Does anybody here have an idea what that might be?
I think you're riding the bevel too hard.
Pardon?
Oh, bevel is too engaged.
Yes, pushing into the bowl. Okay. So I'm pushing into the bowl, and what's happening is there's softer fibers, and those softer fibers will allow the tool to go in. However, a grain line will come by and push the tool out, and then it makes this, it's kind of like it's making a like resonating wave mark on here. You'll see waves on it. So the way around that is, instead of pushing into the bowl, we want to push down onto the tool rest. And we want to be making passes that are going around and are just shaving off the top of that without making forward pressure. So let me clean that up and show you. Sounds different, doesn't it? In fact, the effect is cutting off the waves. I'm applying pressure with my left hand, and I'm making it push back by shifting the body. And there's a couple different terms with turning, especially turning bowls, that I really don't like. Number one, I don't like the name bowl gouge, because if you think about, if you run into something and you gouge your leg, it's like it's like some kind of abrupt action. Is how, in our language, that's what it sounds like. And the other thing too is that sometimes it's called a chisel. Plus, it looks like it should be scooping something out. So if you're coming to this brand new and you hear bowl gouge, you're thinking, well, this is like a chisel. I mean, do we use a hammer with this? Or do I put this in here and just scoop everything up? So that's like really puts people off initially. And when they realize they're only engaging a really small part when you're doing that. The other thing I don't like is the term push cut. All right? The reason I don't like that, it sounds like something we're physically doing. We're pushing it. But in reality, we're not. Our hands and our arms need to be completely stationary and anchored. We need to basically have no movement in our hands and arms when we're making these cuts. The only thing that's moving is my body weight is shifting from right to left. I'm relaxing my knees, and I'm simply shifting my body weight. And this is a huge thing. If you guys pick this up, if you find yourself moving your arms and your body's pretty stationary, you're probably not getting the smooth cuts that you really can. And the way to do that is basically shifting your body weight. So watch again what I'm doing here. I'm setting up for the cut, and I'm positioning myself pretty much where I want to start and where the cut's going to go. Let me move the tool rest down here just a little bit. So what's going to happen is I'm going to make this cut. I might not go all the way to the top, but I'm going to make this cut here. And I'm already seeing where my body's going to shift without picking up my feet. If you're ever making a cut and you pick up a foot, there's no way you can make that look smooth, because all that movement will transfer into your hand. That's the other thing, is our body is not really designed to make really good curves and straight paths here, because we have so many joints and we can articulate into so many different positions. So if you try to draw a straight line, it's not going to be that straight. So we want to anchor ourselves down. I'm going to rub the heel here, and now bevel, and I'm going to pick up that cut, and look at how much my hands and arms are in. I'm getting a little chatter here. I'm off center. I'm switching the angle a little bit. Now I'm shifting. You see my right foot is actually coming up. That's about as far as I should go with that cut, because I'm basically off balance at this point. But you can see how much smoother that was just from shifting my body weight and not doing anything with my hands. So pay attention while you're turning. If you catch yourself doing just a little bit of movement with your hands, try to lock that down and change it and make it look better. All right. How many guys out here, how many people have done a nice salvaged or harvest piece of wood that's a little bit larger, that was a little bit tricky to start rounding off? You kind of got beaten up by it. Have you ever had that issue? Yeah. All right, so the same concept, everything I just showed you there, except the strategy is this, okay? It's basically a combination of everything that just occurred. When I made those waves, I was pushing into the bowl. Because there was no negative space, there was no bark, I really wasn't going in very far, but it was still making a problem with that. So what happens with a rough bowl length like that is there's we have a tendency when there's air coming by, so if you have like bark and there's an opening spot, we have a tendency that the tool will move up. Well, as that tool moves up, the next area that comes down is going to smack that tool. And that just gets transferred into your arms and your shoulders, and you're going to wear yourself out. Instead, what you want to do is you want to practice your move here from left to right, the way you're going to cut it, and practice shifting your body. And each time you pass, you're basically going to move the tool up, like not even a 16th of an inch. You're just going to shave off the next layer. So no matter what's coming by, if you've got a winged bowl or something, you're not pushing the tool into it. You're just waiting for that wing to come by and get cut. And you're not going to go super fast with it. I can't really illustrate it here because this is a solid piece, but essentially it's no different than what I was just doing. You just put more pressure down into the tool rest and not forward into the bowl. So you put pressure down and you shift. So basically what I'm doing here, this doesn't illustrate well because this is a solid cut. But imagine if I had voids in there and those voids were going by. I would not change the way my tool is operating. You would just hear it. You would hear that void and you hear the difference of the wood cutting and the not cutting, but that's it. Okay, now I'm going to do something here, and I want everybody that knows what I'm doing to raise their hand, but don't say anything, okay? Because I want to find out. This is probably one of the most important things of wood turn. Don't say it. You got a few of you know. Okay. All right. Let me pass this around. Let me ask you something. How many times have you turned? I want you guys to look at the end grain of this. Okay. I'm not trying to impress you. Look at the end grain of that. Okay, so how many times, let me ask you this, how many times have you turned something and you've got this really nice smooth surface? And you're like, that's excellent. I'm getting it. I know what I'm doing now. And then the next thing you know, you go turn something else and you come back and you're like, what just happened? You have end grain that's ripped out and you're like, what just happened? Like, that makes no sense. And worse, how many of you do something like that and then go and try to sand it for like an hour? That's torture. You don't want to do that. Okay, so what just happened there is a supported grain cut. All right. What I did was an unsupported grain cut. All right, I'm going to use my fingers first. All right, you ready? All right, let's pretend this is the side of a bowl with a closed rim. So this is the bottom. This is the side of the bowl, and it's going to be closed, so it's going to be like that. We'll imagine this is all hollowed out. Okay. Well, when I come from the bottom of the bowl, if I'm cutting this way, this finger has a longer fiber underneath it. Okay. That longer fiber is supporting that cut. So when I cut this fiber, it's going to cut smoothly because it's got good structure underneath it. Same with this one. This fiber is longer, so this one's going to get cut. Up here, it's a different issue. Now this one's shorter, so I need to cut. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to cut from this direction to that point. This apex right here is the turning point. So I would cut up this way and then down that way if I were to cut grain like that. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I've got another illustration for you. So imagine the bowl. This is a cutaway of the bowl. The grain's moving through it. But imagine if we came down the side. This is what I just did. It was unsupported. I came down the side and I'm basically just ripping all of these fibers out because they have nothing underneath them to support them. Does that make sense? Yep. If I go this way, it's exactly as if I came this way and I'm cutting this direction. All of a sudden, there's nothing right here. This part of this fiber is going to get ripped off. Okay? There's nothing supporting it. Same if I went this way. This is going to get ripped off that way. That's called, okay, so how many people have heard this? Just turn downhill. Or just turn with the grain. Like, what? Like, I mean, you have the blank sitting there like downhill. Well, what I just did looked like it was going downhill. And the grain, all that's confusing. I prefer to use the term supported grain cut. When you do a supported grain cut with a side grain mounted bowl, what you'll be doing is you'll be going from the bottom of the bowl up the rim. Okay, so you can see how this fiber right here has a longer fiber underneath it. So it's getting cut, but it's making a clean cut. Now when we do the interior, we're going to go from the rim to the bottom of the bowl, and all of those grains are supported. Okay? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. Where am I?
John, I'm in a class.
All right, I think we should make a bowl. What do you guys think? All right.
You're gonna use a good piece of wood.
Okay. Well, how about you at a time? What do we got?
There's all the time you need.
Good day.
Okay. All right.
Remember, we're all retired, we got no place to
At what point do you guys fall asleep, though? That's the question.
No.
All right. All right. So, Dave, I think Dave brought this in. Yes. Thank you, Dave. This is maple. Yes. I think this is maple. All right. So we got a bowl blank like this. Now this is a little wide. All right. When we start looking at a design for a blank like this, if we're going to make a bowl, I start thinking about what we can do with this. All right. If you're watching my videos, you know I really like to make tenons, and I'm going to make a tenon on this. But I'm going to do this as kind of an open, what appears to be a very simple bowl. Now, when you start designing your bowls, it's easy to think, well, if I do a curve and a flat and I make it really complicated, it's going to really impress everybody. It doesn't. and unfortunately, it's very deceptive because the really subtle curved bowls are also the trickier ones to make but they look really simple. When you see it, you're like, anybody can make that. Well, what I think about when I'm looking at a shape like that is a lot of turners will use chains. They'll take a chain and they'll hold it up and they're like, well, that's the curve I'm looking for. Well, my problem with the chain is that you can put like tight roundings on that. What I prefer is if you took a balloon, you imagine if you take the part that you're not put behind you, you're not looking at, you're just looking at the round end of the balloon, and if you just press that, and you get this really nice oval, it's trying to make something like that. So if I came in here and I'm looking at just this really nice oval shape, okay, how can I turn that into a bowl? If my blank is roughly this size, I can make a bowl that comes through here, and I can have, I don't know if that green's visible to you guys. So my first thought with this piece is a couple things. I also love doing closed rim bowls. So I could do, you basically just take the proportions of the bowl. So this is 11 by, was it 2 or 2.5? 2.5. Just nodding. Okay, 2.5. Okay. So it's longer than it is high. All right. Let's say like this. So I kind of like mentally take a look at this and start thinking, well, what can I do with that? So if I were to do a closed rim bowl, which is actually kind of nice, I would have to turn it pretty tight right here. Probably have a foot down here and come up here. And that's something we could do. But I think I'd rather do kind of an open-faced, a little simpler bowl. So that's one option. What I'm looking at with this is I'm thinking something more along the lines of this, which kind of gets into that balloon kind of oval shape. So if you imagine you have, this would be a big balloon, okay, ready? But we're going to pick up the curve of that balloon. It's going to come through kind of like this right here, and it continues out. So I'm thinking of a shape that's like this, but a very smooth oval shape that comes through very thin. And then we'll do something pretty neat with the foot on here. And that foot's going to have the same wall thickness as the bowl itself. So it looks very simplistic, and I'm thinking I'm going to go that route.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay, are we all right with that? You look like you're concerned. I think I'm asking, but
Too many times what you're gonna do.
A or B? No, I'm gonna do the second
Yeah,
one.
it's all right.
Okay, so
You can do it.
I hope so.
What happens in the age?
The HBC. Okay, so now the next thing I'm looking at is the grain structure of this. So we have the pith is down in this area, so we've got rings that are going this way. So what I want to do is I want this to be the top of the bowl, because what's going to happen is I'm going to cut down through those rings, and that's going to make basically concentric ovals in the center of this bowl. Okay, if I do it the other way, it'll look okay, but it's going to be more like an H shape, and it's not quite as visually pleasing. But if we cut through those rings, it's going to be nice. So that's going to be the top of the bowl. This is going to be the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and get started here. So I'm mounting this between centers, and the reason for that is I've got a lot more control of seeing where I'm going to turn. I can get this positioned where it's going to turn smoothly. A lot of the live edge, natural edge pieces I do, I'll definitely turn those between centers, because a lot of times I want to tilt the piece as I'm working on it, because one of the wings might be higher than the other one, and I can adjust it. That's why turn between centers is nice. First thing I'm going to do is transfer my chuck size to this base, so I can start working the tenon. So here's the easy way to think about this. If you can establish the foot of the bowl, and you can establish where the rim is going to be, you simply have to connect those. That's it. We're just going to connect it. So what I'm going to be doing is, I'm going to work away this material down here, and I'm going to get down to, it may be larger than this, I'm going to get down to the tenon size, which would be about here, get that established, take this whole area out, and then I'm going to clean up the rim here, and then all I have to do is connect these two right here. That's all I got to do. It's not as complicated as you think. Now, and if you want more variations of this, it's the same thing here. So I create the bottom here, and I'm going to work the curve here, and then I would have to come up here and make another cut to make this inside closed area. We're basically connecting the foot to the rim. So what I'm doing is I'm touching the left side of the dividers here only. And I'm holding the right side over to see where that line's going to be. I'm a little bit narrow, make it wider. So there's my mark. And I'd say you don't want that right side touching, because it's going this way. It could be painful. All right, I'm going to switch over. Now this is my 5/8 inch 55-degree bevel, so I have to wall gouge. This blade is low. Okay, so here's the rule of thumb. You take the diameter of the bowl, or the blank, divided by 6 to 9,000. All right, this happens to be 11 inches. Do the math. I shouldn't be over about 700 or 800 RPMs with this. The bigger that blank gets, the slower it has to be. You get a big blank. If you have a larger lathe, you got some larger lathes. You get a big blank going on here. Sometimes you have to be down at just a couple hundred RPMs, and it feels like, wait, what am I doing? This is taking forever. But the speed at which this outer portion of the bowl is going around versus the center is dramatically different. This is a flywheel, and it has a lot of energy. So we don't want to get this up at a higher speed. You definitely don't want to go over 1,000 RPMs. So I'm going to make some push cuts into the headstock, or going toward the headstock. Okay, so if you're wearing a glove when you're turning, it's controversial. Some people really get upset about this, but there's nothing really hanging out to get caught, and your hand should be behind the tool rest all the time. You shouldn't be reaching over that tool rest. But the heat of the shaving coming off of it is pretty high. So I'm going to cut up to that point. the peak of where I can go. What I'm looking for is any vibration in the lathe. Probably about as fast as I want to go. I've got to make my test a little bit lighter. This is hard maple. Okay, see notice the push step too? I'm riding the bevel, I'm not moving my hands or arms. I've got the tool up against my thigh, and I'm shifting my body weight forward. I'm not pushing with my hands or my arms. Between the hardness of the wood and the lathe, I can only touch so deeply. Alright, let's see what we got. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to use my spindle detail gouge to put a bevel on this. Now, it's really important to have this undercut dovetail bevel. I still need to remove more material to make my tenon here. Let's see what I can do here. Let me bring this in. I'm going to make a shoulder here for this. What's really important when you're doing the tenon and the dovetail or the tenon and the shoulder, you need to have that tenon and shoulder so that it sits on top of the four-jaw cut. And I'll show you what I mean in a second. So that's going to be my shoulder right there. So I'm learning the speed of this wood and what I can get away with. That was probably the deepest cut I've made so far. That's the other thing too, is if you turn a whole bunch of different species all the time, if you're trying one blank here and a different type of species, it's going to be tricky to get to know them. It's literally like getting to know a person. The more you can turn of one species, the more you're going to understand what you can do and what you can't do. This is a very hard maple, so it's a slower cutting wood, which makes sense, but it's good to know that when you're doing this.
Before you get started on that, a question. Why didn't you balance that first before you started what you're doing?
I'm not too super concerned with that. I can do that. And it's, we're going to come back and do that in just a second. I want to get this tenon and shoulder established. It's not a huge problem right now. It will allow me to go a little bit faster once I get that side cleaned up. But I'm just going to get the shoulder and the tenon formed first. So I'm going to about 3/16 of an inch is what I can cut as far as the depth of the cut before I bog down in the seam because this is so hard. And I want this to go a little bit deeper. Two more passes here. change the camera angle about 4 points right now. Did you see me pick that cut up? That was the heel. That was, and it's such a small move to go from rubbing the heel, moving to the bevel, and cutting. It's almost, you almost don't see it with your eyes. Okay, that's going to be about deep enough. Now, what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to shape that shoulder because I don't want this to be 90 degrees like this. I want it to be undercut as well. Now, this is a technique. There's a kickback I showed you guys earlier. This is a technique I learned from David Ellsworth, is that you don't leave your tendon and your shoulder, what's going to become the foot of the bolt, don't leave it ambiguous. Don't leave it as this kind of blob down there and just ignore it. Make it the shape that you're intending this final bolt to look like. So as you're making these cuts, you know where that shape is. If you leave this where it's just kind of, it's a cylinder and it's kind of rough cut, you're not seeing it as clearly as you can. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and clean up the edge here like you were suggesting. Now the other thing is I try not to stand in front of the lathe, in front of the line of fire here. So now I'm going to move myself to this side because if you turn long enough, you'll have things come off the lathe and you'll realize that they can be painful. And it's better to be out of their way than right in their way. Again, this is just shifting body weight. No hand or arm movement here. Wow, that's coming out hot. See, I do a lot of wet wood turns. It rarely gets this hot. Okay, so now I've got everything's cleared up as a cylinder with a foot and a shoulder. So now here's where we're at. So I've got this shape going on. And I'm dropping down to a shoulder and the tendon and then up to the shoulder and then back over this way. Okay, that's where we're at this point. Now what's really important to understand is that tendon is never going to touch the bottom here, ever. If it's touching the bottom, you don't have a good support there, and it's probably going to shift as you're turning. It has to sit on top of these jaws. That's why the shoulder is there. And the dovetail jaws are going to grip that undercut dovetail I have here. Now my jaws are about 11-degree angle when they go in. Now there are jaws that don't have the dovetail that have like a serrated teeth in there. And typically those are used with spindle turning. And I know there are people that turn bolts with them and they can do it, but I don't recommend doing that because they come out of the serrated jaws very easily. The dovetail jaws, they really hold on to the piece very well. Okay, so now we just have to connect this dot. So now I've got this point established right here, and I know my rim's going to be here, and I know this is the shape I want. So now I just need to create that shape, which will obviously happen over here too. So that's what we're going to work on. How you doing over there? Looking good? So now we've got it pretty stable here with that side. And I'm going to bring the speed up a little bit, but I am going to stop at 800. I'm not going to go farther than that. So I'm working, now I don't have anything to go by as far as a guide. I'm visualizing where I want that curve to be, and I'm putting the bevel where I'm visualizing that curve. By the way, with the piece slowing down like this, this could be really tempting to want to get up to a really fast RPM, and you want to try to not do that. You're just working your hand-eye coordination and figuring out what can you get away with, how can you kind of make this cut before it bogs it down. So I'm doing a supported rim cut from the bottom of the bowl up to the rim. So each one of those fibers I'm cutting has longer fibers underneath it. I'm slowing my pace down so the rate can keep up with me.
Can I say a few things while you're turning?
Yeah.
Okay. His supporting cuts, a lot of people just call it a supporting cut. The quicker you learn how to recognize that, the better your turn will be and the less sandpaper you will use. So that's really, really important. So in this particular instance, Kent was cutting what appeared to be uphill, but it was actually a supported grade cut. And it's better if you can learn how to do that.
Yeah.
So the other thing is turning the outside even is not necessarily the best time-consuming thing to do. I turn my bowl the way I turn it, and the outside will be even when I'm finished turning, automatically.
Right. A lot of times I would just simply turn this outside curve, and then it would naturally take care of any imbalance out there. This is just going a little slower because it's very hard. I can do another thing when I'm doing it. I'm dropping the handle, just making a little bit more of a shear cut. watching the top of the bowl as I'm doing this, because what I want is I want to watch that shape up there. If you're looking right at the tool, you're not really picking up the full shape. So if you watch, I'm looking over to the right side and watching the top edge of the profile of the bowl. I'm seeing what I'm doing with the tool here, but I'm also keeping an eye on that top profile. Now remember that curve I had drawn up there? You can see how it's not doing that right now. Well, we're going to take care of that in just a second. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to a shear scrape. How many people use a shear scrape? Okay, good. Now, a shear scrape is a really cool technique. It's a great way to do refining cuts like this. Now, in this case, I will be in line with the piece a bit. Just going to be aware of that. So what I'm doing is I've got the tool, I'm using this bottom wing down here, and I'm facing the flute towards the bowl, and I have it angled downwards down on my thigh. And I'm going to start working that corner off and making that flow. Now here I'm really watching the top. There's no reason to watch the tool. Now watch, my body's moving. I'm not moving my hands or arms. It's just my body. I'm shifting my body weight from forward to backwards. It's also a great way to take tool marks off. And do very subtle adjustments. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to make big cuts. See the curve starting to develop? Now I don't have this down at about a 45-degree angle. I'm kind of getting a little more aggressive because I want to remove that material first. Once I get down to like a really fine, where I want to make it very subtle, I'm going to drop that angle even more. It's basically like shaving the wood away. And be careful with the chatter. Chatter's going to leave marks. So what I'm doing there is I'm putting more pressure down into the tool rest. I'm watching the shape at the top. I'm watching right here. From my vision, I'm watching here. You guys are probably seeing the top as well, but you're seeing it from your end. How many people watch my videos? Yeah. What's the exterior of the bowl? You guys remember me saying this? Oh wow, I thought I said it a lot. All right, I'm going to say it more now. The exterior of the bowl is the bowl. Oh. Yes. You want to take your time and get this exterior right. And it may look like I'm kind of fussing with this, but you want to get the exterior right because that's what the interior is based on, and you just really want to make sure it's get this exactly the way you want it. That's leaving marks. So I'm going to take my time and just shave those off. And what's happened, the reason for that chatter is I'm extended more over the tool rest, so it gives this tool a little bit more chance to vibrate there. If I had, I would probably move up to a 3/4 inch gouge here, so it's a little thicker and a little more stable. Okay, you see how that corner went away? All right, I've got a little bit of texture there I want to deal with. Let's get that going. There's some really nice quilting in here. You guys know what the quilting, how the quilting's formed? You see what I'm talking about, the quilting there? Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so that quilting is, this was probably part of the trunk, and there's a heavy branch that's like right here somewhere, and that heavy branch over time with the form, and that's what creates that quilting that's inside here. So I can see this area right here is a little higher than right up against where the foot's going to be. So I'm going to bring that down. Closer to what I want. I'm moving the tool rest inside just a little more support there. Touch of tool marks there. I'm going to do one little thing real quick. I'm going to come in here with my spindle detail gouge and clean that area up real quick. Now I'm going to do one thing that's kind of a no-no. I'm going to go a little bit against the grain here. There's just a high spot right there. I got to decide what I want to do with the rim. So I've got a rough idea what I want to do with the foot. I'm probably going to take this shoulder down and let what's the tenon right now become the entire foot of the bowl. But I'm not quite sure how I want the rim to go. So a lot of design-wise, something that's really interesting to do and is beneficial is to emulate or repeat things. So I really like having this slight angle on my feet. And what's nice is to repeat that angle up on the rim. So you have that angle going on here at the foot, and then you repeat it there. Even if there's just a small ledge there, that repeating of it design-wise it kind of echoes one another. So the angled foot here and possibly the angled rim here. Now I'm not going to be doing any sanding on this. And I want to get this a little bit smoother. Okay. I'm going to go back. Hold on. This is probably the hardest wood I've turned so far this year. not as far as a challenge, but as far as just the density of it. So I have a tool sharpening course, and if you're interested in, I didn't title it right because it should be tool sharpening and shaping. So if you're interested in taking a new bowl gouge and shaping it like this, I show how to do that in my course. And then the benefit of this 55-degree bevel is what I'm showing you here is I can use those wings for doing really subtle things, plus that angle gets down to the bottom of the bowl really nice. And I also show how to do a whole bunch of other profiles as well, a 40-40 and all that.
And as you know, we're a golf course community. So Doug Thompson is racing here in his golf cart to bring you a gouge. At full top speed of about 22 miles an hour.
So I've got some time, in other words. Okay. Now, when you get this shear scraping going, this is great if you've got tool marks or something going on the surface. Now, it really only works on the exterior of the bowl, but when you're doing it right, you're getting these nice little shavings up here. So again, I've got the tools basically, I'm presenting it about that angle, and I'm only using the bottom wing, and I have the flute up against the surface. I'm okay with that. I don't want to keep you guys on that. I would spend a little bit more time with that, but that's okay.
Take your time.
I'm going to look this over now.
The people here can drive after dark.
That ankle is tougher than bad mother.
Another good habit to get into is hold the chuck and turn the headstock. It's less likely that you're going to strip the threads of that. Okay, now you can see, I don't know if you can see that gap in there, but the gap that's in here is right where I need it to be there. You also don't need to super over tighten it, especially if it's a wetter wood. If it's a wet wood, you're going to be crushing those fibers, and you're also going to distort it, so it may not be turning true. So take your time and just clamp it down, but firmly, but not. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that angle that I have on the foot up here on the rim. I like to get all of my rim decisions done immediately, and then I start working down into the bowl, and I don't come back up to that rim. Okay, so here's this angle. Now I'm actually holding the bevel here and looking at the angle on the shoulder. I'm getting kickback, so what do? Coming up to the 3 o'clock position or 90 degrees so it won't kick back again. After I've started the cut, I can open it up. First step is kind of just to establish how much material can be removed. The second cut is a much lighter cut, like a finishing cut to get that angle set up. And I'm not really thrilled with the surface right underneath that rim. So guess what? We're going to shear scrape it, but we can shear scrape it from this side. It's not that big of a deal. Plus I have more tool support here, or tool rest support. Here it's not turning quite as true as it could be. Here's another little trick. What you can do is, instead of trying to like force it, loosen this up, just turn it just a small amount like that. And then come back in here. Now let's look and see what it's doing. Okay, still got a little bit there. It's surprising how you can find the location, how it's mounting in the chuck where it turns a little more true. Okay, let's work with that. Alright. Now we gotta get this material out of the center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this down a bit here. I'm looking straight down and I'm looking at the bottom, the exterior of this, and I'm matching the bevel edge to the exterior. Thinner than that. It's looking pretty good. This is beautiful wood. It's not chipping out or anything. It's really, really nice. Now the reason I turn this way is because I love turning natural and live edge bowls. So if you're turning a natural edge bowl and you have a situation where you have lanes that are set up here like that. Well, I'll put one here. Let me show you. You're turning a natural edge bowl, and what happens is, especially if you're going to do something thin, you have no support up here after you've turned down into that. Okay, so I'll leave this completely solid. I'll establish this wall thickness, and then I slowly work down the side, making the same wall thickness down, but then I'll come across and take some of the center out. That center mass is holding this together. If you were to take, it would be, I mean, I guess you could do it, but if you were to take this piece, turn the outside, and then turn the inside by scooping from the center out, by the time you get to the outside, this is all exposed, and it's all that thickness, and it has no support. So it's going to flex and it's going to move. And the fact that this tool's anchored, that's when you see people, if you've ever seen videos like that on YouTube, where the rim just blows apart. It's because it's because the rim's doing this, but it's such a low frequency, you almost don't even see it. But if that stable tool hits it, it just shatters it. So instead, you establish that wall thickness. It's going to be solid in here. Make the wall exactly what you want. Remove some of that mass in the middle. Go down a little bit. Remove some more of the mass. Don't go back up. Don't go back up. The biggest flaw people make is they think, they get all the way down here and they're looking at it like, yeah, that's pretty good. I want to fix the rim. And that's when it's like, it just goes flying all over. So you don't want that. And I've just kind of picked up that habit. The other thing that happens that is another issue with that is if you're doing that, think about it. If you have a bowl like this, and you're taking the interior out, by working down the wall, I know exactly where that wall is the whole time. I've removed some of this material and go to the wall next time. And I just keep working down, and I can check that thickness every time I go. If I start scooping out the center, I might be scooping out like this, where all of a sudden I'm clear down here and I have almost no support, and I got this really thick wall, and that's awkward too. Or worse, you get down here, and let me ask you if anybody has done this. If you've got the bowl and you're clearing out the center, and you get down here like this, except it's like that right there. You ever done that? Yeah, that's how you make funnels.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's no fun. So that's why I work from the rim down as I'm going. I'm gonna bring the wall thickness down a bit. Again, I'm watching the exterior of the bowl, the bottom of the bowl, and I'm matching I'm making the bevel of the gouge parallel to this side. That's my template right here. I'm just following this backside. Okay, so that's looking good. I'm just going to remove some of this mass, and then I'll work down the wall again. Now the other nice thing about this is I can flip the gouge over and do a push cut here, and I'm using the other side of the gouge that I already sharpened. So I can get a little more use out of this sharpened edge before I have to go back and sharpen.
It seems like the inside is turning easier than the outside.
Yeah, it's the better side, I think. I think you're right. Yeah, it is turning better. I've also switched back to my half-inch gouge. So you don't have to do a whole bunch here. You basically take an area like this down. And now I'm going to remove that and bring it down to the same level as the rim. I'm taking my point of view up here, and I'm watching that bevel and making it parallel to the exterior. This is where that heel rubbing comes into play. See how subtle that thickness is? I don't know if you can see that. It's just a little edge there. So I'm going to rub the heel. So you got anchor, heel, bevel, then I'm picking up the cut right there. See how subtle that was? Alright, and then I'll check the wall thickness. It's a little too thick there, so I'm going to bring it down. And so what's happening is I'm just gradually taking that wall down so it matches the same thickness. So I don't want to get aggressive up here, but down here I can take more away. So I'll rub it, just barely pick up the cut, and the cut will get deeper as I go down so it matches. So here I'm going to rub, cut, let it get deeper, and then we'll do the same thing. We'll take the push cut to push that down. Okay, so take down the next section and then just match it up. I'm going to switch here because it's really killing these edges. Check our thickness. Pretty good. It's building up. I can go to another tool and I go to my 5/8 inch and do a push cut with that and get a little more out. I'm trying to use my tools efficiently. I'm going to the 5/8 inch just to kind of rough out and move that material. Then I'm coming back to my 1/2 inch to do this lighter cut. And it's thick here, so that's what we want. We want to be sneaking up on the cut all the time. So I'm going to make this deeper now. So again, I'm going to rub the heel, bevel, and I'm going to start cutting right here. And it's become a little deeper as it goes down, so I'm getting that thickness. Still too thick there. I don't know if you can see that rim, that edge right there. There's kind of like a defining line where this becomes a little bit thicker. I want that curve to flow down in there. So I'm going to go back up to that. It doesn't cost anything to turn the lathe off and take a look. And I've got a little bump right there. So another thing you can do that's really helpful is to take a pencil, and I feel this lump right here is right there. So I'm going to work that so that's smooth across there. I'm not going to go all the way to the rim. I'm basically demonstrating. This is thick enough it'll support it, but I'm demonstrating what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't typically go all the way up to the rim. But I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to deal with this little bump. I'll continue down, so it's a little thicker down here. Lost the cut, and just rubbing the bevel, pick up the cut. Alright, then we'll take some of the center mass out. Pretty much have the center exposed, so I'm going to go ahead and take this all the way around. I'm getting pretty aggressive with those cuts too, but I'm going straight into the headstock, so the chances of this coming loose are pretty poor. I'm essentially just pushing it back onto the chuck. Just run across this and smooth it out of it. Don't want to get too aggressive there. Remember what I said before, I want to be trying to make each one of these passes like my final pass. So I'm mimicking that curve that I'm making the bottom of the board. It's getting too aggressive. I'm going to switch to my finer bone gouge here. I'm going to check my thickness. It feels good. I'm going to take this down. I'm going to go sharper because it's requiring force. And we don't want to be forcing our tools and push the other one. There we go. I'm going to get both these sharpened up. Some dense wood. I like it. That's all right. I'm up for a challenge. I like that. Yeah, and that's the thing. If you turn a whole bunch of different species, you'll learn things, but it's also better to kind of work with one species for a while, and so you really understand exactly how it operates. Yeah, I'm gonna grab that. Thank you.
Matter of fact, I got the curved rest ready if he wants it.
Yeah, I don't think it'll need it. It's a shallow bowl.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
All right, so now I'm gonna go take this center down and we'll have this thing wrapped up. You don't want to push through that middle because you're going to pull out fiber. So again, each time you're making a pass, make it a practice cut. Imagine that's the finished fast, the last cut of the bowl. So imagine the exterior of this bowl and the distance. If I have a point here, how long it takes to go in one revolution. Well, that very center, so imagine like this whole room going around in a circle. Well, the center, to go around in one circle, if I'm in the middle of the center, that's all I had to do. So it's not putting forth much energy. But the outside of the room would have been going incredibly fast. So you want to go really slow across that center so you're not knocking those fibers out. So I'm still following the curve of the exterior. You can see how it's flat in there. Now I'm kind of taking our focus to the center here. So I want this center to be set to have a nice flowing curve. Like that's a little too deep, so I'll back up and take a little bit of that off and a little bit more. The other thing you want when you're at the bottom of the bowl, if you ever had problems with the bottom of the bowl having a divot, like if you cut or it kind of comes up, what you really want is pretty much any bowl, you want that bevel to be parallel with the headstock or perpendicular to the headstock rather. So it's coming across, at the very end it's coming across. So even if you have a bowl that's shaped like kind of narrow, if you have a narrow bowl like this, by the time you come down here, you want that to be pretty much horizontal right here at the very end so that those two sides match up. If you come down at an angle, you're going to have a divot. Now if you have a bigger bowl like this, it's really common to come down and then you go a little too low and then come back up. And then you kind of got a bump in the middle. So what you really want is you want your bowl gouge to be horizontal right there. At that last point when it's about ready to meet the other side, you want to make sure that the bevel is perfectly horizontal. And you get lots of practice doing this over and over until you get down to the bottom. And that's where the repetition comes in. If you don't do the repetition, it's going to be tricky to learn all this stuff. So just use every chance you get as a learning opportunity. And that's why you just take these slow and pretend each cut is your last cut. So I'm going to rub the bevel here. This is getting close to the last cut. I don't think this is going to be the last one. Now I'm closing the flute so I don't get that little skip back. And I'm coming down here. I'm not sure if this is going to be the last cut or not, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to treat it like it's the last cut. I'm just going to take my time and take that little bit off there slowly so I don't rip out any fibers. And I have the tool at almost a 3 o'clock position. The flute is over 90 degrees to the right. And then we'll just let it slice right there and see where we're at. It's feeling pretty close. Remember how I was explaining that we have the position of the bowl with the grain coming down and we're cutting through them? Look at those ovals. That's the result of cutting through those grains. Okay. It's I always want it to be a little better. For what we're doing, it's pretty good, right? It's okay, it'll work. All right, so I got some tool marks here that I could work on, but what I'm going to show you is how I would shape this. I was actually making one pass here, but I'm just getting pretty good. Okay, I'm going to use my jam chuck. How many here use jam chucks? All right, a few hands. All right, it's the cheapest way to work, and when you work with cheap wood or free wood, not necessarily bad wood, but free wood, and especially stuff that's been around in nature that has wormholes and things like that, it's tricky to get it down to a vacuum chuck or things like that. I have found that I love using jam chucks because they work with everything. Imagine mounting this. What would you mount that to? Take that foot off, right? You're not going to use a cold chuck. You might be able to get a vacuum chuck in there. Most of the times when I've tried using vacuum chucks, it's somehow sucking air right through the wood, and it'll lose grip. So I'm like, I love the jam chucks. All right. I've got stickers up here for you guys too, if you're interested. Now the important thing to do with this, because we're just using scrap wood, I'm just making sure that's turning true, and it is. The one thing you want to do is you want to turn like a donut on the front of this. You don't want this coming to a point, because that little point is not going to be the stable inside your bowl, as a big round donut will be there. So that's going to hold on at the bottom of the bowl really well. The other thing that's really important, if you didn't use it, is to have that tailstock, because you've got the little mark right there where you're going to be able to center it up. So I'm using just a paper towel here so it doesn't scratch up. And I'm going to bring this back up. And let's see where we were. You can actually just put it on the tailstock and then bring it up to the jam chuck. And we'll see how it's rotating. Always bring that leg speed down, especially when you start out something like this, just to check and see how it's doing. Got a decent wobble there. Let me see what we got. I think it's going to be fine. I'm going to take the shoulder down. I'm going to use the foot of the bowl, or the tenon as the foot. I'm going to come down the side of that tenon and change that into the foot here. The other thing that's great about the tenon and shoulder is you have so many options to do. You can even do this with it. See, my thing is I love finishing the bowl so that the novice turner, you guys all know how it's done, but yeah, you guys don't count. When you show somebody that doesn't know how to turn, they're like, how in the world did you turn that on the lathe? That doesn't make any sense. Did you carve that with a knife? I'm like, well, it's kind of like a knife, but no. Yeah, so it's kind of nice to not have that giveaway. That's why I don't typically turn mortises, because they're really hard to take off afterwards. Okay, so I'm going to do some push cuts. Now, I don't want to do aggressive perpendicular cuts here. I'm going to do push cuts to take the shoulder down.
For our members, there's a jam chuck in my locker that I made. It's the same thing as Kent's. It has the higher outside, it's hollow in the center, it has knee.
Yeah, that's just a fancy one. Now, when I see that angle that I established, it's also up on the rim. And I'm doing that by watching the bevel, bringing that bevel down. Right up to it. And the shoulder's down. Now, I want a nice crisp edge there. Unfortunately, the bowl gouge doesn't make a crisp undercut edge. But we have another piece of that. That's a single detail guide. Something like that. So it's pretty crisp, but I want that to be a definitive angle there. And I'm looking back at the rim to make sure the angle's kind of matching it. And in design, if you have things that echo each other, it's more pleasing and it feels as if it's correct. Has anybody been to the Gap? You ever go to the Gap? You want to talk about the clothing store? Oh, yeah. They have a t-shirt table, and they have all these t-shirts there, and all these amazing colors. And you look at them, you're like, oh, that's really nice. And you're not thinking, I don't need a t-shirt. You're thinking, which t-shirt do I want? Well, what's happening here. So that's what happens when you have a design element that's down here on the foot, this angle, and the angle of the rim. You're kind of like, oh, that's pleasing seeing those together. And when you see all those colored t-shirts lined up the same thing, it's pleasing. It's like, oh, that's cool. I should get one. And then you get home and you realize you just bought a blue t-shirt. I'm like, why did I do that? Okay, so I'm going to use the shear scrape right up into the base of this. And I'm going to clean up that yellow bottom part. I'm going to get chatty here. I don't want chatty. Pushing more down into the tool rest. Got a little rest spot in there. Let's switch over to a thicker gouge. This is going to be a little more stable to deal with that vibration. And that's skipping a bit because it's not perfectly lined up. So that's fine. Okay. Let's see where we're at here. So we got a little bit of a low spot there. I'm going to be fine with that. Okay, so now I never like leaving. Okay, I'm not going to be fine with that. I'm going to clean that up. I don't like leaving big, thick foots like that. I like the foot to have the same wall thickness as the bowl itself. There's a little bit of chipping on the edge of it. What I'm going to do is clean up that, which is going to be the part that sits on the table. And now I'm going to scoop into it. You know, I think it's the question I had earlier, why is it cutting harder on the side? I really think it's the grain direction. On the inside, cutting through those, it was quite a bit easier. It's actually a pretty good question. So what I'm trying to do is get this down to the thickness or the same plane as the bottom of the bowl. As if the foot weren't there, we have this curve of the bowl that goes underneath the foot. I'm going to narrow this just a little bit with a push cut. This is where you want to start getting delicate with your cuts, but I also want this foot to be defined. So now I'm going to do a backward scraping cut. It's very doable, but you just got to go slow and don't get aggressive. Can you see this? Can you see the tool? Okay. What I don't want is I don't want to ram that into the side because it's going to engage a lot of this wing. So I'm just gently moving this material out of the way. And as soon as I get to that side wall, I'm disengaging. I'm not going much more. Now I'm going to do something I really don't recommend. I'm going to...
Don't tell us, just do it.
Yeah. I'm going to take the flute completely open at 12 o'clock. Okay? This is like we were talking about when somebody looks at this and if they've seen a chisel and a mallet, you think, well, that's how this thing works, right? You just jam it in there. Well, that's how you get in a lot of trouble. But if you're making a really light cut, you can get away with it. Just work your... I'm going to mess this up now. This is going to go flying across the room, but here's what I'm going to do. I basically, you can see that little rim, that edge right there? I'm going to come across that with a pretty much open flute. But you see how light that cut is. I don't want to engage too much material there. And then we can come back, whoops. We can come back here and square up this wall a little bit too. You can see what's coming off the bowl tabs here. It's really light shavings. I'm not making anything aggressive here. but I'm working down to that plane of the bottom of the bowl. And now the bowl gouge is going to be a little bit tricky to get in here for these last final cuts, so we're going to switch over to a pointier tool. And that's this middle detail gouge. So I've done all of this with the 55-degree bevel and the spindle detail gouge. I've switched between a 1/2 inch and a 5/8 inch 55-degree bevel. I want to get this side set. A little deeper than I needed. Now at this point I'm not going to stop the lathe because stopping it's going to probably twist those fibers. I'm going to come in here, I'm going to call it there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to apply forward pressure and turn the lathe off. And that's it. And that was enough to separate that.
Unbelievable.
So,
Yes.
well, there's plenty of sanding to be done on this. You know, for what we're doing for a demo, it's pretty nice.
That's my
but
point.
I would probably spend a little more time with it. And I did have a little bit of catch there, which you guys heard, and you can see it there. So we can sand that out if you really want. So there's the final piece. I'll let you pass it around. It's not perfect by any means, but yeah. Okay, questions? Who's got questions? Nothing? I covered it that well? Amazing. Thank you.
It's about 3 steps above most of us.
Okay, so we have a couple things for you. First of all, on behalf of the villages, we have a pen for you that's laser engraved with the villages.
Awesome.
Just a memory of tonight. It's kind of cool.
Very cool. Thank you.
And of course, we have
Thank you.
And Doug Thompson, who's here, has decided that you make way too many trips to the sharpener. So, this bowl gouge, he's giving you a 1/2 inch V bowl gouge, and it's made out of CPM 10V, which is crucible powdered metals. That'll be on the test. And it requires a lot less sharpening. So at the national conference, I'll get a handle for you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you all for that.
Thank you.